Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to talk about build making. 2023 has been the year of new players joining the Division community. I've done plenty of guides structured to help such players, and they've been met with great reception. And so I want to continue that trend today, and what I want to focus on is build making, which is obviously a hugely important and integral aspect to the Division 2 as a game. Your build is your character's lifeblood, your bread and butter. And so I want to try and break the system down in such a way that should hopefully be a bit more consumable and understandable for those who are newer to the concept and experience. And one of the reasons I felt compelled to make this is I've noticed more and more lately the reliance on build videos. Now, don't get me wrong, I love build videos. They're one of the most popular forms of Division content across the internet, and they're a fantastic platform to be able to share build ideas and inspire others. But what I've noticed over time, especially for newer players, is that they will use these templates with zero modification. They'll see it works well in someone's gameplay, so they carbon copy it and head out the door. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I've certainly done it myself over the years, but in my view, you're not getting the full usage out of a build when that happens, because a build's power is partly comprised of the synergy you create, the strength of the bonuses you apply, but it is also heavily dependent on how well or not well it syncs up to your own personal playstyle. Because we all play the game in different ways, and so fully understanding the build system in the game and understanding the steps needed in order to create your own build is something that I think is vital for every single Division 2 player, whether you're new to the game or not. So I hope this video is helpful and hopefully strives towards accomplishing that goal. If you end up enjoying the video and you do find it helpful, please do consider clicking that subscribe button. It truly helps out. And believe it or not, 75% of y'all that watch my content are not subscribed, so what are you waiting for? Those sweet, sweet notifications keeping you updated and informed on everything Division are just a click away. But without further ado, let's get into this guide. Feel free to reference the description below for timestamps to different sections of the guide, but where I want to begin with is with a breakdown of each of the Division 2's endgame gear and weapon types. Right? Which different options exist to build with, how they function, how they differ from one another, because one big trouble area I often see is where people are either wanting to farm a gear roll or option that simply isn't possible, it doesn't exist, or they're overly confused about how to get a gear piece in some specific way. I want to clear all of that up before we move any further along. Keep in mind this is going to be going over the mechanics of how endgame loot works. This will not be a how to farm or best farming method section. If that's what you need, that's a whole larger topic, and fortunately for you, I've already made a video on it, so feel free to check it out in the upper corner or in the description down below. But endgame loot, let's get to it. There are 5 different possible types of gear and 2 possible types of weapons that you can use in the endgame to make a build, all on the same level of statistical power, but each interacting and functioning in different ways, so it's important to break down each of those differences. Beginning with the most common type of gear you will find in use, high-end gear. Now this is the standard gold-colored gear that you'll find everywhere in the endgame, and there are a few consistencies that you'll find between all of them. For one, high-end gear has what is known as a brand. This is the 3-tiered bonus you'll find near the top of each gear piece readout, and what it means is that you'll unlock however many of those bonuses depending on how many pieces of that specific brand you have equipped. Next up, high-end gear always comes with one core attribute. This is the first stat you will see when moving down the list, and those can be either weapon damage, armor, or a skill tier. Each piece also comes with 2 regular attributes, and there's a large pool for what these can be in each category of red, blue, and yellow. Something that's important to know is how attributes skew for different gear. Every high-end brand has a predetermined core stat allocation, and what that means is that pieces of a certain brand will always roll with the core stat that fits that profile. So for example, a Fenris, Providence, or Sokolov branded piece of gear, those will always drop with a weapon damage core attribute, every single time, just like Gila and 511 will drop with armor, and Empress and Wyvern will drop with a skill tier. Those roles are predetermined depending on what brand you're going after. Attributes are not quite the same, however, depending on what core role you have, again, weapon damage, armor, or a skill tier, the first of your 2 attribute rolls has a statistically higher chance to roll with something in the same category as your core. So, for example, weapon damage and damage perks across the board are always red. If you're farming a brand with a predetermined weapon damage core attribute roll, then the first regular attribute slot has an 80% chance, let's say, to roll a red as well. And like I said, there are many options within that category. It could be crit chance, headshot damage, etc. But it has a higher likelihood to roll as the damage related stat, again denoted by that red coloring. No, I don't know if it's actually an 80% chance, that was hypothetical, but there is some sort of weighting in place to make it more likely to be the same color as your core. It's not a guarantee, so you do have a chance to get any combination you like, but it is more likely. High-end chest pieces and backpacks come with talents. They each have their own pool of them, but you won't find talents on any other pieces of gear besides those two. And lastly, for high-ends, every mask, chest piece, and backpack comes with one mod slot, whereas every high-end glove, knee pad, and holster do not. Let's move on to endgame gear type number 2, improvised gear. Now, improvised gear is a subset of high-end gear, but I did want to separate the two in order to avoid confusion. Improvised gear can only be found at the crafting station. I did a video covering where and how to access those. I'll link it up above and in the description if you're interested. But improvised gear, while the same gold color as high-ends, has a few big differences. Improvised gear does not come with a brand, so you're losing out on those bonuses. However, to compensate, every piece of improvised gear comes with a mod slot, including those ones that I just said don't have one on regular high-end gear. So this can create some interesting combinations and allow you to access higher amounts of stats that usually aren't available. Additionally, since improvised gear does not have a brand, that means it doesn't have a locked core attribute in the same way that high-ends do, like we just covered, so every time you roll one, it will come with a different core and random attributes. Moving on to gear type number 3, named items. Now, named items are kind of a beast in and of themselves. What they are high-end pieces that come with a perfected or boosted version of something. That could be a talent. For example, the Sacrifice named chest piece comes with perfect glass cannon. Or a stat roll. For example, the White Death Sniper comes with higher than normal headshot damage rolled. Aside from these different stats or talents, named items follow the exact same rules as high-ends as far as brands, core and regular attribute rolls, etc. Just know that there is only one type of each named item. If the perfected talent that you want only comes on an Alps piece, let's say, then that is the only version that is possible to get. And their unique attributes and talents cannot be put into the Recal library or otherwise transferred to other pieces in any way. That brings us to gear type number 4, gear sets. Now, gear sets are basically the OG version of brands. They are that green, teal, whatever you want to call them, color items you will find in the endgame. And the more you wear of them, the more bonuses you get. Every different gear set has a 2 to 4 piece bonus, meaning if you wear the 2 piece of the same one, you unlock that bonus. 3, that bonus, and 4, you'll get the full suite of bonuses. And these bonuses can range from stat boosts to unique talents, right? There's a variety. One difference to point out between these and high-end gear is that because you are unlocking these powerful bonuses, gear sets only come with a singular regular attribute, instead of the regular 2 for high ends. Other than that, they follow the same predetermined system where every set has an associated core, and the regular stat roll has a higher chance to match that color. Gear set chest pieces and backpacks do not come with the regular talent loot pool. Instead, they contain what are known as amplification talents, which in some way boost up the properties of that gear set bonus, and they only go into effect when you're wearing the full 4-piece set and have either the chest or backpack on specifically. And lastly, gear sets do follow the same mod slot configuration that high ends do. Let's shift over and talk about high-end weapons quickly. These are pretty easy to understand. Each weapon comes with 3 stat rolls and 1 talent. The first stat roll will always be a damage roll for that category that your weapon is in, so ARs will come with a roll of AR damage, SMGs SMG damage, etc. Secondary category is an attribute unique to each category. So for example, ARs will always come with health damage, SMGs will always come with crit chance, so on and so forth. As I said, each class has its own unique attribute there. These first 2 stats cannot be changed. They can be upgraded and maxed out, but every weapon class has those 2 stat slots fixed. What can be changed is your third attribute slot. This is a general stat pool that is consistent across every weapon class, containing stuff like swap speed, accuracy, damage to armor, and that will always drop randomly on each weapon and can be rerolled to anything within that pool. Lastly, your talent. Each weapon class has a different talent pool, and same as your third attribute, that drops randomly and can be modified. And finally, we're switching back to a category that covers both weapons and gear, exotics. Exotics are a bit more straightforward in that every exotic weapon or gear piece has fixed attributes. Those rolls on each piece can fluctuate. You might get one to drop with higher rolls than others, but every single Coyote's mask comes with weapon damage, crit chance, and crit damage, just like every Eagle Bearer comes with AR damage, health damage, and headshot damage. The only exception here is that as of Year 5 Season 1, when I'm making this video, new exotic weapons have received the randomized treatment, meaning their third attribute rolls are random each time. As of the making of this video, this system currently only applies to the Sacrum Imperium Marksman Rifle and the St. Elmo's Engine Assault Rifle, but if you're watching this in the future, further new exotic weapons likely contain this property as well. And the final thing to note on exotics, they follow that same mod slot distribution system, where chest pieces, masks, and backpacks have them, and gloves, knee pads, and holsters do not. All right, well, my apologies for that being a tad bit tedious. I know that was a lot of information, but I do think it is important to understand, as I frequently see people say they're trying to farm for something that just doesn't exist, like a perfected talent on a different piece than the named item it's tied to, or they're confused about why a striker piece, for example, isn't dropping with anything other than weapon damage. And like we covered, that is because that is all it drops with. Anything aside from exotics, perfected talents or stats, and gear set amplification talents, right? Anything can be re-rolled using the recalibration station. But the way the game has it set up makes it so that certain item profiles are easier to obtain than others. The famous one I always hear about is the Fenris chest piece with armor. You can get one, I have it, but it means you need to get a piece to drop with 3 out of the 4 other rolls that you want, both of the 2 attributes and the talent. That way you can re-roll to armor, and voila. Last thing I wanted to cover in this section, a bit of an FAQ answer. I regularly get asked on build videos or whatnot, does it matter which of my pieces have which rolls? The answer is no. No, it does not. 3 damage rolls and 3 armor rolls will give you exactly the same stats regardless of which 3 pieces contain each one, right? The location of major, minor attributes, mods, anything, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the total values you're achieving once everything adds up. So I hope that clears some things up. Alright, that is gear and weapons and the rules around them. Let's now dive in more specifically to your build. You want to make a build? That's great, but where on earth do you start? As I said, direct copying a popular build video can work, but I don't believe you're reaching your full potential if you do so. So let's back up and go through a bit of a different set of steps. Beginning with, what do you want this build to do? I think a lot of people think to themselves, I want an OP build, but aren't necessarily factoring in the how or why a build could achieve such a status. So the main consideration is going to be, what is your playstyle, or at least what playstyle do you want to use for this particular build? And this can incorporate a lot of different things. Do you want to be able to forget cover and run and gun your way around the map? Do you want to sit back in safety and attack targets from range? Do you want to support your allies instead of directly damaging the enemy? Do you want to incorporate skills more than guns? If so, in a more offensive or defensive capacity? Right? These sorts of questions can begin to help narrow down what kind of build you might actually want to pursue, because there are a lot of different builds that can be assembled in the Division 2. However, that one question alone will not get you to your destination, because let's say, for example, you decide that you want an effective, close-range run-and-gun build. Off the bat, I can think of several options there. You could go with a Hunter's Fury gear set, specializing in SMGs and shotguns and getting good enemy disruption and self-sustained buffs. You could go for a more traditional high-end SMG build with the likes of Bloodsucker and Intimidate for your talents. You could also go for something like a Striker Chameleon setup, utilizing that exotic AR for its high rate of fire properties and pairing it with Striker to be more effective and having better handling for close range. Right, there are endless possibilities, and even within those, infinite different distributions for how you could use your core attributes and regular attributes, depending on if you want to go for a more glass cannon type of build or more tanky. So, are you confused yet? Good, you should be, and that is why I find this topic so worthwhile to cover, is just because of how vast it really is. So let's reset. We've selected a general playstyle that we want to go for. How do we further narrow things down from there? Well, I've got 2 suggestions here. The first is to find a focal point, as I call it. And what that is basically the main inspiration or idea for a build. This is something I think the majority of us veteran players end up utilizing a lot in our build making, given we made so many builds over time. Right? Instead of just saying, I want to make another sniper build on top of the 5 I already have, we can say, hey, here's a certain named item I haven't ever used much, let me try and make a build around that. And then I can find other pieces and bonuses that would strengthen what this item does. And your focal point could be anything, a certain gear set, specialization, and exotic, but if you can lock down one component that you really want to use in your build, then that can help inform everything else you build around it, as well as help you get not quite as lost when considering everything else you decide on after that. So let's say you decide your playstyle is a support role, you want to sit back and buff up your allies, and then maybe in-game or online you say, hey, I've seen this neat named backpack called the Hermano, it comes with perfect overclocked, which focuses around my skills and buffing up teammates. Great, now you have a playstyle you're going for and a central piece you want to incorporate. And from there, you can search up for other pieces, weapons, and skills that will best achieve your desired playstyle, as well as buff up that focal point that you've selected. So that's one recommendation that I think can really help structure the build making experience. The other, don't freak out, is searching up build videos. Now you're probably like, what the heck? You said not to do that at the beginning, and I did, But here's the difference. As opposed to searching up something like Division 2 OP solo build, that's going to get you a million results, showing you a million different builds that may or may not even align with how you like to play the game. But if you can first decide on a playstyle, better yet incorporate a focal point, then you can refine your search and use something like Division 2 tardigrade tank build. That's going to give you results much closer to what you really want and what will actually suit your needs better. And it has the potential to inspire or teach you about a build type or gear options that you didn't know about. The one thing I will stress if you do this, I think I mentioned it earlier, never feel like you have to carbon copy a build video. A build video can be a great reference for a general build structure that works well, but if you see someone using a talent that just doesn't gel with you, or they're running 5 armor cores and you think you only want to run 3, it is essential for you to make those modifications. Not only to experiment, but also just to try out and find the best way to complement your unique way of playing the game. Because I guarantee you that myself nor anyone else on the internet plays the Division 2 or any game for that matter exactly as you do. So build videos can be a great resource. However, even with refined searching in mind, I don't believe they solve the problem for everyone. So let's take the next step here. I want to lay out a few resources in-game that you can utilize to learn more about what options are available. The first one being the Recalibration Library. Now, I'm sure you've interacted with this plenty to store all of your stat rolls and whatnot, but this bench offers a really great resource, as the name suggests, as a library. Because you can use it to go to any item type, weapon class, gear category, whatever, and see every single stat and talent that is available for each specific piece. Want to see what stats can roll on any LMG? You can go look at just that. Want to see what the full talent pool is on backpacks? You can do it. So if you're at the point where you know what kind of build you're trying to go for, but you just don't know exactly what is available or what might be the best way to achieve it, then the Recal Library can be a fantastic place to gain some of that knowledge and get those ideas. Another one is the expertise menu in the same bench. Again, while this is another progression system, the expertise menu allows you to look at every single endgame relevant item in the game. Want to see every named and exotic assault rifle? You can click on the AR tab and scroll all the way down the list. Same with brand sets, gear sets, anything. Now this menu will not go into the specifics of everything. It won't tell you exactly what bonuses each set has or what every exotic's talent is. However, like I said, it is a database of everything the game has. So whether you're looking for a piece in a specific slot for your build or you're just browsing, you can use this menu to find the name for anything loot-wise in the game. And then you just need help from the friendly internet. Type the Division 2, insert item name here into Google, and you can read up on what every item is and what it offers, in order to narrow down what you might want to spend your time farming for. And then the last thing that is very important to remember to use, I'm sure a lot of you know about this, but this is a full guide, so I just want to point it out in case anyone doesn't know. And that's that the stat sheet in your character menu is your best friend. You just need to tab over from your inventory screen to get here, and this breaks down every single stat that your agent can invest into onto your build. It tells you how much you have of it, where it's coming from, and it informs you on special information, like with crit chance, it lets you know that it has a 60% cap. So while you're making your build or at any time, definitely refer to this sheet in order to keep track of exactly what you're investing into and what your totals are. Alright, my friends, with all of those things in mind, knowing the types and mechanics of endgame gear, taking those first steps of refining a playstyle goal, finding a focal point, using resources in-game and online to get inspiration, ideas, and knowledge, I think you're going to be pretty well on your way to developing any kind of build you might want to make. I'm sure some of it is still daunting, but it will continue to be to a degree until you really just dive in there and get a sense of things for yourself. One last really important piece of advice I want to give is that regardless of what phase you're at build making, don't allow yourself to get tunnel visioned. And this has happened to everyone, myself included. I solidify a plan for a build, I work out all the pieces I want, and then I just decide, yep, this is it. This is the final version. And I laser focus on it. And if it works out, then great, it works out. But more often than not, your first draft of a build is not the most refined. It is not the strongest. You'll find that weak link piece of gear, or skill, or talent, and all I ask is that you remain open to experimentation. Build making in this game is a very iterative process, and there are many, many paths that can be taken to ultimately reach the same destination. So don't worry about how windy the road is to get to where you want to go, just see where it takes you. Remember, you've always got communities like ours right here, as well as the internet at large for resources, as well as a place to ask questions. But regardless of if you take my advice, someone else's, or none but your own, just remember to never fully close the door on something, as something to inspire your next favorite build could come from anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today, concluding this ultimate build making guide. I very much hope you enjoyed and found this helpful. This really is a vast and sprawling topic, so I tried to be concise while still thorough. But as always, if you have any questions, I openly invite you to leave them down below and let me know your thoughts on the guide in general. Including my fellow veterans, leave your own tips and pieces of advice for anyone who may be trying to become more adept at build making. Everything helps, so let's make this a constructive space. That is going to do it for me today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.